So what you notice is even though both these items have the same ID, they're not getting added to each other inside of the inventory. So I want to add a new method or rewrite the entire add item method to allow for that to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to inventory and we're just going to get rid of this entire add item script. We're going to start from fresh. We're going to start out by getting the amount in the stack from the item that we're trying to add, which is equal to item to be added dot amount in stack. And then we're going to create a list of items and call it stackable items, and then we're going to set it equal to a new list of item. We're also going to make a list of slots, and then we're going to call it free slots, or let's actually do empty slots, and we're going to set it equal to a new list of slot. Okay, so what this parameter right here is trying to do is, if I filled out this parameter, I want to first add the item to be added to this item slot. So first I even want to check if there is a starting item. So we're just going to do if starting item. Okay, so now that we know there's a starting item, we want to make sure that the item IDs match. So starting item dot item ID is equal to item to be added dot item ID. Now we're going to add another AND statement. We're going to do starting item dot amount in stack is less than starting item dot stack size. And what this condition right here is checking is making sure that whenever you're trying to add to this slot, that whatever you're adding isn't already full. So now that we know these conditions are true, we're going to add the starting item to the stackable items. And we do that by simply using the add function. Okay, so now we can go below it. So now we want to run through the entire inventory and see exactly where we can add stacks. Now in order to go through each slot, we're going to do for each slot I in slots, and basically this is going to go through every single slot in the slots array. We're going to check if I dot slots item. So now that we know that there's an item inside of the slot, we're just going to simply do item z is equal to I dot slots item. So now we don't have to reference I dot slots item every time, we can just use z. So we're going to do if z dot item ID is equal to item to be added dot item ID, and z dot amount in stack is less than z dot stack size, max stack size, and z is not equal to the starting item, then we're going to add it to the stackable slots. Now if there was no item in the slot, then we're going to add it to the other array. So else free slots else empty slots dot add I. Okay, so now that we know which items we can stack and which slots are empty, we can actually start adding the item to the inventory. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to do another for each item I in stackable slots or stackable items. I'm going to create an int and call it amount that can be added, and set it equal to I dot max stack size minus I dot stack amount and stack. Okay, so now if we do if amount in stack is less than or equal to amount that can be added, then we're just going to add it directly to this. So we're just going to do I dot amount in stack plus equals amount in stack. And then we're going to destroy item to be added dot game object. And then we're just going to return out of the function. And then else, we're going to do I dot amount in stack is equal to I dot max stack size. And then we're going to subtract amount that can be added. And then it's just going to keep running through until this item either gets destroyed or dropped. So after this for each statement, we're just going to do item to be added dot amount in stack is equal to the leftover amount in stack once it runs through all this. And then we're going to do if empty slots dot count is greater than 0, then we're going to add item to be added dot transform dot parent is equal to free slot empty slots 0 dot transform. And then we're going to do item to be added dot game object dot set active false. And that's actually all we need to do. And now if we go test it out, it should theoretically stack. So let's start out by getting the stack of 512, and if we pick up the 1, it goes up to 513. Alright, so now we're basically done with a lot of the inventory. Now what we want to do is add the feature to actually drag items to other slots. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the player and add a component called drag and drop. Okay, so we're going to open that up inside of Visual Studio and get rid of the start and update. How we're going to start out is inside this drag and drop feature, we need to have a reference to the inventory because that's what we're going to be dragging and dropping items from. So inventory inv. And then we also want some holder objects, and you don't really have to worry about these right now. So do just game object cur slots and then item cur slots item. So whenever you're going to be dragging item from slot to slot, I actually want there to be an image on your mouse cursor. So we're just going to do public image follow mouse image. And the reason we're having an error here is because we need to do using Unity engine.ui, and that should go green again. Okay, so this is all we need components wise. Now we're going to actually go into the functions. So void update. Inside of the update, we want to start out by setting the follow mouse image equal to the mouse position so that it actually follows it around. So we're just going to do follow mouse image dot transform dot position is equal to input dot mouse position. And basically what that's going to do is set the follow image equal to wherever the mouse is. Okay, and now we want to go into the actual drag and drop system. So we're going to go if input dot get mouse button down 0. This is checking if he clicks with the left mouse button. Then we want to do game object obj is equal to get game object under mouse. And we're actually going to add this function right now, so don't worry about the squiggly lines. So we're going to go game object, get object under mouse. And the reason we're making it a game object instead of a void is because we're actually going to be returning a value. So we're going to start out by going graphic raycaster. Raycaster is equal to get component graphic raycaster. What this does is it's just grabbing the graphic raycaster component off the player. We also want a pointer event data, and we'll call this event data and set it equal to the new pointer event data. And then we're going to do event systems dot current. So you're going to see that we have errors, so we're going to go to the very top and we're going to type using Unity engine dot event systems, and that'll get rid of the squiggly lines. So now that we have both these objects, we're going to go to event data, so this right here, and then we're going to do the position of it and set it equal to the mouse position. And we're going to create a list of objects that the event data has actually like raycasted. So we're going to do list raycast results, and we'll call it results is equal to a new list of raycast results. So now that we created this list, we can actually give it a value. So we just do raycaster dot raycast, and this function takes two parameters, which is a pointer event data and a list, and we just created those two, so we can actually just plug in the event data and the results. So now whenever we call this function, it does a raycast from the mouse position and returns anything that the raycast hits. So now we're just going to run through each result and check if it has a slot. So we're just going to do for each raycast results I in results. So this is just going to go through each result. We're going to do if i.gameObject.getComponent slot, then we return i.gameObject. So if it's a slot, we just return it directly, and then if not, we'll just return null. We can change this to get object under mouse because I accidentally named it wrong, and that's all we have to do here. Okay, so now that we set it equal to the object under the mouse, we want to do else if input.get mouse button 0. So if he's currently dragging the mouse, then we do follow mouse image dot color is equal to a new color, and we'll do 255, 255, 255, and 255. And what this is doing is it's setting its opacity up to 255. And then we also want to change the sprite and set it equal to the curSlot.getComponent image.sprite. So if the player is dragging, then we're getting the mouse image and we're setting it equal to the image of the slot. Okay, so we have a function here to detect if he pushes left mouse down, if he holds left mouse, but now we're going to add one to see if he lets go of mouse 1. And you do it that way by the get mouse button up function. Okay, so whenever he lets go, we're gonna check if there's a current slot. And if there's a current slot, we're gonna make sure that the current slot has a child in it. Alright, so inside of here, we're gonna create a new game object and call it new ob. And set it equal to the get transform under mouse. Get object under mouse. Okay, now we're gonna check if new object. So if we found a new slot underneath it and new object is not equal to the current slot, so now we're going to create a new if statement and we're going to check if the new object has a child. And if it does have the child, we're going to store it in a new item variable. I'm going to call it objects item. And I'm going to set it equal to the new object dot get component slot dot slots item. Okay, and now we're going to go through some if conditions. So if the item ID is equal to the one that you're currently dragging, then they're going to stack. And the way we're going to do this is if objects item dot item ID is equal to curSlot item dot item ID, then we're going to add it to the inventory using that stack. So we're going to do curSlots item dot transform dot parent is equal to null. So we're gonna remove it from the inventory, and the way we do that is by making the parent null. Now we're gonna add it back to the inventory, and we're gonna pass in the curSlots item, so the current slot that we're dragging. And if you remember, we had an optional variable over here, the starting item. We're gonna make that the new slots item, so the objects item. And then we're gonna get the curSlot, or no, that's actually all we're gonna do right now. Now we're gonna do an else statement. So if the items aren't equal to each other, we're gonna switch the spots of the slots. So we're gonna do objects item dot transform dot parent is equal to the current slot dot transform, and then we're gonna do curSlots item dot transform dot parent is equal to the new object dot transform. And then if we go back here to see like if the slot has an item, we're gonna add an else statement, and inside of here we're just gonna do curSlots item dot transform dot parent is equal to new object dot transform. And what that'll do is if you drag it into an empty slot, it'll still add it to that. Now if you remember, we check all three of these, if, else if, else if. Now we're going to add an else, and if all of these are empty and none of them are true, it'll default to this down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make the follow mouse image sprite equal to null, and then the follow mouse image color equal to a new color. We're going to say equal to 0, 0, 0, 0. And that's black with 0 opacity. So we're going to make it disappear. Now if we go back, it should work now. But first we need to give it some items. So go to the player and remove the drag and drop, because this is not supposed to be on the player. And put it on the canvas. And then the follow mouse image we're going to create right now. So above the background image, we're going to do a UI image, and then this is going to be the thing following the mouse. So we're gonna call it follow mouse image. And then in order to get it to go over every other slot, we're gonna put it underneath the background image. If you put it above, it'll disappear. And we're gonna drag that mouse image into the drag and drop field. And I'm also gonna set the opacity 0 by default. So now for these objects, I'm gonna create a new object with an item ID of 1. And then I'm going to set the stack size to 9999. And then we're just going to make this taller, just so that we can differentiate between the two. So this is going to be item 1 of ID 1, and then this is going to be item of ID 0. And we're going to add 3 of these, give them some values. This one's going to have 512 is fine for each of them. Sphere 2, 9999, we're going to create another one, and another one. Okay, I actually forgot some code over here on the input.getMouse button. You're going to add if there's a current slot, and the current slot.getComponent slot.item slot, or slots item, then we're going to execute this code. Basically before, it was still trying to change colors, but there was no current slot, so it was giving back an error. Hopefully it should be fixed now. Okay, also we need to add one more thing. Up here where the new object is, on line 35, we're going to add curSlots item is equal to curSlots dot get components slot dot slots item, and maybe that'll fix it. Okay, so you can see now we can actually drag stuff and it goes back to the position. If we're dragging, let go, still goes back, and it works. Okay, now you can see when I stepped over another object with ID 0, it added to this stack and then the inventory. And if I move it all the way down here, it'll go through, stack with this, and then move up here on this. Okay, you can see it works. Now, if I try adding the 1000 stack to the 48, I get an error. Hold on, let me fix this. Okay, so I just found the error, and we're just gonna change one thing. We're gonna make this public, and we're gonna go back inside the HUD and reference the player inventory. Okay, one last change we need to do. So an error that I'm getting is the slots don't actually know that they have an item until you activate the slots, because in order to check for the item, it needs to be in the update function for each slot. So I'm just going to change this, and basically I'm going to go to the inventory, and every frame I'm going to do for each slots I in slots, I'm going to do I dot check for item, and every frame it's just going to check for an item, any changes to the inventory. Okay, one last change, and we also need to add a custom function. Instead of the start function, I'm going to add a custom one, and we're just going to call it custom start. Inside the inventory, we're going to go to void start, and we're going to do for each slot I in slots, I dot custom. We also want to make this public. I dot custom starts. Okay, so I've just figured it out. We just need to add on line 43 in drag and drop this right here. And that fixes it. Alright, so now I want to add a way to drop items out of the inventory. So the way we're going to do that is by going to the slot and adding a new public function called drop item. And inside of here, we're just going to check if there's even an item. Then we're going to do slots item dot transform dot parent is equal to null. And then we're also going to do slots item dot game object dot set active true, and that'll re-enable the object. A problem is when you set it as a child, it'll move up to a different position in the world. So what you'd want to do is set its position to wherever you want it to. But for me, I'm just going to do .0. I'm just going to put it in the middle of the map, and that's the drop item function. Okay, so inside of drag and drop, we're going to do if input dot get key down keycode dot g. Then we're going to do game object obj is equal to get draggable or get object under mouse. Then we're going to check if there's an object, and if there is, we're going to do object dot get component slots dot drop item. And then if we go back and hit G, you can see it drops the item back to the center of the map. That one just shot off. But you can see it does work.